We're live.
We're live.
Woohoo!
Good morning, Sandra.
Good morning, Annette. Good morning, world. Hello, world.
I love it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so this is it's Tuesday morning. It's bright and early. The
Bright and
sun
early.
is hidden behind some clouds. What's it
Yes,
like for you?
that's what we've got. We've got a lot of cloud cover over here in Kent, Ohio, and it's just looking like a sleepy kind of morning.
Yes. Yes. Yes, a sleepy Tuesday.
Good morning, Shannon.
Woo! Is Shannon on?
Yeah, she
Yeah.
commented to us. Can you
Oh,
see her comment?
there we go. I can see it now. Hello, Shannon. So, welcome everybody. I am Sandra Wint. I am the founder of Me, Her, Us, and I focus on helping women. I'm a coach, and I help us focus on helping women overcome burnout and some of the slings and arrows that come when you're a woman in leadership. And I have my very good friend, Annette Garsteck. And Annette, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Thanks so much, Sandra. I'm Annette Garsteck, founder of Annette Garsteck Career Consulting. I'm a career reinvention coach, and I get no more fun than when I'm empowering women to reinvent their career, rediscover their professional purpose, and redefine what success means for them.
Mm, yeah. I loved one day when you were sharing with us about women, what you said about, a lot of us, well, I'll let you explain. You were saying that how women enter the workforce,
Mm.
what they choose to do in the workforce, and when they choose to reevaluate that it's time to move. So,
Yeah, it's we all sort of end up in a workforce place, right? A little by chance, a little by accident. We know somebody, or like the case of my story, I ended up converting from a temporary hire to a permanent hire at a big Fortune 50 company. It wasn't exactly what I planned. It wasn't what I went to school for. I stopped going to school full time and started working full time instead. So a lot of chance elements for me. And then you're great, you're happy, right? All of your friends come from work, you're having the time of your life. Then something else shifts, and maybe you need to care for a loved one. You have a child, maybe, or, you care for, like in my case, I ended up caring a little bit for my father in law. And then you're like, wait, what am I still doing here? How am I still here when it doesn't meet my needs anymore? And
mm,
then you start to reevaluate, you start to shift. How am I going to exit? How am I going to reinvent myself? What am I going to do next? And that process happens now for people in the workforce. Oh my gosh, sometimes up to 8 or 11 times. When, our parents' generation, that was not the case, right? You got a job, you stayed in that job until you retired, and then that was it. So it's a different workplace even now than it was for me back then. And so, how do we continue to help people look at where they are and figure out, how did I get here? And how can I change, if that's what I want, and
right.
do something different?
Yeah. Do you find that women feel guilty about moving on?
Women often say something like, I don't love my job, but I love my team, or I love the people that I work with. And I think this concept of blind loyalty has to really change for women,
Mm,
because you are the only one that you have to worry about loyalty to. You have to take care of you first. Kind of like when we say you have to pour from a full cup, you can't pour from an empty cup. But it's that way at work. You don't owe anything to anybody else besides yourself. And so, how do you do that? Is you take care of you first. And then I think that when you do that, reevaluate, exit, reinvent yourself, you inspire the women
mm,
that are left behind. But you don't have to stay just because you have a friend bestie at work and you're worried about him or her. You have to do what's good for you first, and then hopefully everybody else rises along with you.
Mm, I love that.
Mhm.
I also, something hit me as you were talking about that because it resonates so much for me. Um, One of the things that I think about or thought about was who's going to do my work? Who's
Mm.
going to do this if I'm not there to do it? Is something that I hear a lot or heard a lot from, in particular, women when I was in the workplace. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts about that, Sandra, are this, and that is Ohio, which is where we're located, is an at-will state, right? You can walk away or your company can walk away from you at any moment. And the company will do that. It will
Hmm.
walk away from you at any moment and they don't care who will do your work. So you cannot care more about something than the people responsible for it care about it.
Mm,
And I also
preach.
I used to flip that script too when I was a leader in corporate America because I had great people that would, once they showed up at work, would do a good job, right? But the showing up part was really difficult for some
Mm,
people. You know, maybe it's a transportation issue, maybe it's a family issue. But I would tell my one team member that I loved dearly, it's like, please just get here. I can do a bunch of things for you once you get here, but I can't care more about you getting here than you do. So, what can you do to get here? And you can't be responsible for everybody else. You have to be responsible for you. And I think this ties in to what we're talking about
it
today,
sure does.
which is emotional intelligence. Women traditionally have scored higher on the emotional intelligence assessment score, whatever it is, test, whatever test you take. And Sandra and I have a resource for you. So we'll put that in the chat here so you can go back and actually take the assessment for yourself. But there's 4 components to emotional intelligence. And those 4 components are, I have them right here: self awareness, self management, social awareness, and relationship management. And women outscore men very frequently on social awareness and relationship management. And so I think that's why we have those feelings of who's going to replace me? Who's going to do my work? What about the people that I leave behind? Because that's where you score highly in those areas. So I know that you took the test.
I
Where did you
did.
score? Where did you score?
Okay, so that would have been helpful if I'd oh,
You got it.
I
Yay.
did, I got it. I was like, "Where did I put it?" Because sometimes I file some things away where they'll be,
Safe.
safe.
Safe, never to be found even by you or me again. I
Yeah,
do
pretty
that as
much.
well.
I must have filed it really well. So, actually, Shannon, was commenting that, everyone is replaceable even though we don't feel like it.
It's true.
Um, yeah, and it's really hard to do, to not care more about the work than the people around you.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's so true, right? I can't want this more for you than you want it for yourself is such an important thing. All right, so where I scored, they called me the Rock.
Ooh. And what is your superpower?
It says I can control and regulate my emotions even in difficult circumstances.
Look at you.
That's what it says.
That's what it says. Do you believe it?
And then it says it says, "I am great at making myself feel how I want to feel, powering through challenges and keeping a cool head in tough times."
Nice.
Yep, my EQ superpower says being master of my own emotions. So I think, I, and this is a topic I think at some point we want to get into more, and that is one of the things that I thought about when I read this is it's true for me right now.
Mm,
It may not have been true for me, say, even 10 or 15 years ago.
right.
I think that becoming a parent has really changed a lot
Mm,
of the way that I handle, some situations, and I think that in particular the last 5 years, I've been on a, spiritual, journey, and
mm.
that has significantly impacted me as well. So I would say that there are probably some people who have known me in the past that would say, No, not true, Sandra." And then there are some people who know me right now and would say, "Yes, truth."
Mhm. And
Um,
I guess that's a great point about emotional intelligence or EQ is that it's not a static thing about you or me or anybody. It is something that you can develop and grow and expand your capacity in any of the four areas.
mm,
So, such a valid point is that whoever you think you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, doesn't have to be who you are today. And you can work on evaluating and changing how you show up personally and professionally, right?
so true, so true, and I think that one of the things that I know I personally struggle with, and perhaps you can talk about the women that you work with, um, I struggle with self-critique, right?
Mm,
So, how many times have I sat and somebody has asked me about, something, and what comes to mind are the 50 million times I did it wrong,
mm,
right? And that's what I'm thinking about rather than all the times when I did it right.
mm. Yeah, that's a tough one. We're very hard on ourselves, right? There's this pressure that we place on ourselves to be perfect. And I think part of emotional intelligence is knowing, right, as a fact that we're all good at some things and we're not great at others, but that doesn't prohibit us from being awesome on what we're doing right now.
Mm,
And so moving forward with that and knowing that, okay, I'm going to do the best job I can right now, right in the moment. And I guess I'm wondering, as a previous corporate leader and as a leader now, you work with lots of women in a group setting. How how do you see emotional intelligence evolving as like a concept and something that we can do when we bring our whole selves to work?
wow. Okay, so many thoughts are coming into my head right now,
Okay.
which I know for those that know me are thinking, "Wow, really? She didn't just say 2 things." um, so one of the ways in which I work with women or people in general is, I have a strong belief that awareness is the path to change.
Mhm.
1, and 2, awareness about who we are
Right.
and a willingness to just be ourselves,
Yes.
as
I
opposed
love that.
to who we think we should be. Because fundamentally, we are the people that we are. We've developed the habits that we've developed. They've kept us safe.
Right.
And as we become aware of those things, there's less of a need to continue to be who we're not. And I think that sometimes when I have gotten feedback, and I've had a poor response to it, it's been because I believe that I was trying to be something that I wasn't,
Mm,
rather than saying, "You know what? Yeah, that's me. And it's not working for me right now, and here's what I can do about it,"
mhm,
versus the, "No, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong," right? And I think once my personal experience is that once we begin to see ourselves, and to truly understand why we're doing what we're doing, we're more flexible in terms of stopping because, and when I'll define flexible in a moment, but
Mhm.
we're more flexible in terms of our response simply because we see ourselves doing it all the time. And we can take a deep breath and say, I'm about to have that response that I normally have. I'm going to take a deep breath for a moment here, step back from it, and realize maybe that's not what I want to do at this particular moment. Or
Mm.
maybe this isn't how I want to work with this particular person at this moment. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
it's,
awareness is such a huge piece
oh my goodness.
of EQ, right? So there's self-awareness. My assessment says other awareness, which I think is situational awareness, right? That ability to read the room. And my EQ superpower is noticing how others are feeling.
Yeah.
So
So
like,
what was yours
yeah, I was the
type?
intuitive. I know,
Hmm.
shocking, right? Shocking. Any but it's and I'm that annoying person that's like, "Hey, Sandra, was so and so feeling a little off today to you?" And you're like, "Oh no, seemed totally fine." And then like later we'll find out like so and so wasn't feeling totally fine. They were having a tough day or something, but they were doing their best to hide it, except they didn't really hide it from me. So I don't always lean into that, right? I
Mm.
sometimes am like, is that too personal? Am I, cramming it onto somebody else's space? Do they not want to talk about it? Are they not ready? Um, so I have to find that sweet spots where I'm like, okay, can I do this? Should I do it? Should I bring it up?
Mm.
Hmm.
So I see Portia gave us a comment here too.
Yeah.
Hi, Portia. Um, and I want to touch on what you just said there, Annette, about the leaning into your superpower and really noticing how others are responding. Um, and I loved what you said about, maybe it's too personal. Maybe I don't want to go there and ask them. Um, Yeah, so I'm just wondering how you can leverage that, how you can kind of step into that superpower and allow it to flourish and still respect people's boundaries.
Mm, yeah, that's a really good point. I think it comes down to communication,
Mm,
which would be something like, Sandra, I'm getting the feeling that you're not feeling quite like yourself today. Um, if you'd want to talk about it, great. If not, that's okay too, but know that I'm here for you.
mm,
So maybe it's approaching that. And then to Portia's point of how can individuals build their self-awareness in a society where we're aware of everything except ourselves? So I actually don't score extremely high in emotional control. And that's not always true. It's very situationally based. So I normally can be in control when I'm in a professional situation, but then you get me with the people that I know the best and love the most, and you get completely unfiltered. I'm going to tell you how I see it. I'm going to tell you what I feel right then and there in the moment. Um, and it takes so much more awareness and control to stop in those moments. But if I'm sitting with a group of people that I don't know as well, I'm like, oh, yeah, they don't need that part of me. But I'm freely giving of that part of me any other time. So I think that requires more exercise, right? And maybe that's what we're talking about, Portia. Maybe we need to exercise that part of ourselves.
mm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do in helping people build like awareness, self-awareness, is when they bring a situation into coaching,
Yeah.
is to play with it.
Mm.
So, as a Gestalt professional, it's very much about doing experiments and getting to either role play situations or maybe imagining that the person is in the room with us and we talk with them about it. Maybe it's, just feeling into what makes the feeling about a situation become more intense, less intense.
Mm.
But really, it's about the coach, myself, helping the person that I'm with experience and experiment the feeling in their body.
Yeah,
And often insights come forward.
sure.
And in that process, we connect with maybe things that have happened to us in the past.
Mm.
And then we can suddenly say, oh, now I understand a little bit more about what's going on for me.
Right. And I think it might be the act of it no longer being novel, right? So this is very similar when I'm coaching through an interview situation or preparation for an interview, right? You don't want the first time you talk about your greatest strength or your greatest weakness to be actually in the interview in front of somebody. You'll want to have prepared that answer, know what you're going to talk about, have a little anecdote or story to go with it. And if you and I have role played for an interview, similar to how you and your client would have role played in a situation, a feeling, a meeting scenario, then it's not novel and your body's like, okay, now this thing isn't so scary and I don't have to protect Annette from it
Yes.
because she's ready, she's prepared. And
Yes.
that's really what our brain does, right? It tries to protect you in the moment because scary things feel like scary things did for our caveman ancestors, right? It's like, oh my God, there's the bear. And really, we're just sitting in a meeting where we don't like the colleague that's speaking that day, right?
Mm.
It's not life threatening, but it sure does feel like it.
Yes, yes,
And so
yes.
practice puts us in a place where we're like, okay, it's much easier now because I know what to do. I know what I've done.
Yes. Yes.
Proper planning prevents poor performance. So true, Portia. Yes. Mhm.
Yes. Yes. So I know one of the things that you and I were talking about, Annette, I'm sorry, is a report that you had seen about what happens with emotional intelligence the higher you go up the leadership ranks.
Sure. So, Sandra, I had told you about this study, which was a big, big, big study conducted by Talent Smart EQ, which the names behind that are Dr. Travis Bradbury and Jean Greaves, which I think we know from the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0. If you don't have it, it's super good. It's kind of a handbook on how you can develop in the 4 areas of EQ. So in 2008. So right there, we're going to stop and acknowledge that that study is 15 years old. But it was a big study. So I don't dispute its evidence, but have times changed since then? Yeah, kind of. And so the results that they found after studying 500,000 senior executives, including 1,000 CEOs, managers, line employees. So they surveyed everybody from the entry level to the CEO, they found that middle managers had the highest EQ scores in the workplace. And then from the middle managers, it went downhill where senior executives and CEOs were demonstrating the lowest levels of emotional intelligence. Some of the thought behind that was, at the higher levels of an organization, their actual one-on-one interaction with people is down, where middle managers, supervisors are interacting with people all the time. So is it a function of more practice?
Mm.
Or do we tolerate behaviors demonstrated by less emotional intelligence in CEOs? I don't know what you think about that, but I remember this study. It stuck with me because when you and I first talked about it, I'm like, have you seen that study? And you're like, no. And I'm like, hold on, I will
Send it to
find
me.
it.
Yes, and, when I saw the study and I read through it, I thought, um, I could certainly see in my experience that that was very much true, and I
Mhm,
would say even today, I can still see examples of leadership that are very dissonant,
mhm.
meaning, they're not at all emotionally aware.
Yeah,
Um, and yet, they're in power.
right.
So, um, one of the thoughts that I shared with you before coming on today was I wonder how much as time progresses and that old senior leadership um, group begins to retire, and
Mm,
those middle managers who are much more aware move into those more senior ranks, how that will shift in the workplace.
yes. I hope that your theory is correct and we will see that shift. But I also think that with the CEO's suite in general, at least here in the States, being represented most often by men, and we've seen bad behavior again and again and again by some male executives, that I'm not sure. I'm not too confident in that.
Mhm.
So once we can get people that display the highest amounts of emotional intelligence, women, um, people that know how to read and work a room, people of color that have more awareness of the room and what's happening, I think we might see a shift, but those people are not at the top. We're still hitting the glass
Yes.
ceiling. Boom, boom, boom. Our head is so bruised from that glass ceiling that I'm not sure there's a real shift. Now, listen, where Dr. Travis Bradbury and Jean Greaves are at right now, we need you to conduct this study and figure out what's happening now.
If
15
you're
years
listening to
later,
us now,
15 years later in a post-pandemic world, we need an update. What's happening? Because when I also looked at their information on gender, they had a note saying that in 2021 they redefined the way in which they studied gender to account
oh,
for more fluid examples, and it didn't have that footnote here
mm.
with the CEO executive study. So
I think too, we say, the leadership ranks are primarily male. It's so true. The recent Gartner studies showed that senior women leadership or senior CEO leadership at Fortune 500 companies has reached an all-time high of 10%,
woo,
which really
yay.
sounds like, wow, 10%. But when we talk about it in pure numbers, that's 52 women. I mean, they
Right,
can call each other.
right. And Sandra, women are the highest educated people
Oh my
in the
gosh,
US.
in
We
droves.
account for over 50% of undergrad degrees, graduate degrees, PhDs, yet our representation at the C suite is so very low. I don't know if you follow Denise Conroy on
Mm,
LinkedIn,
no.
but she talks about this all the time. And I am endlessly fascinated by her content.
So, is that Conroy?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So I will definitely look up Denise. I'm just putting her name here so
Yeah.
that others can see it. Um, so one of the things that I think is really interesting, I read a book called Playing Big by Tara Moore.
Okay.
And one of the things that she talks about,
Love that.
trying to find a place where oh, there we go. Playing Big by Tara Moore.
Okay, I'll have
um,
to get that one.
yeah, oh my gosh, such a good book. And one of the things that she talks about is that good girl. Um, the good student behavior that we learn, and that what makes us successful at school, right, does not make us successful in the workplace.
Sure.
So the skills that are taught in school are, to really um, study our lessons,
Right.
be able to regurgitate it, be able to support our assumptions or our um, points with evidence and research. Um, where we are not taught to challenge authority, we're
Question.
not taught to network,
Yeah.
we're not taught to self promote. And
Mhm.
those are the things that really do help you in the workplace.
Mhm.
And so, one of the points that Tara Moore makes is we really should be teaching women and young girls how to effectively do those things. How do you effectively challenge authority without becoming um,
Yeah, outcast.
which of course is a much larger discussion that we're
It is.
having because of the way we view women in general.
Right. Mhm. Yes, Portia, assertiveness is viewed as a threat. The same, and we've seen this in studies again and again and again, right? A young child that's male is identified as brave, and a
Yes.
young girl child, a female child, is identified as, you know, questioning. It's always something bad, right? There's assertive versus aggressive. So you can, I don't have to tell you those studies. You can look for them again and again and again. Um, so, yes, I think if you're raising young female children, you have to make it okay for them to question. That sort of socialization starts at home. And, it continues through our career. How many times are we told, good female employees don't brag? Sit there
Oh
and do
my
your
gosh.
work and you'll get noticed. Oh my God, is that a miraculous formula for sitting there doing a good job and getting noticed? No, it's a fast track to a 3% merit increase for the rest of your career until you die. That's what it's a fast track to.
Oh, yes.
So don't do that. And but we have to make it okay to talk about it. And
Hmm.
then, Sandra, I'm going to say this with all the love in my heart behind it, is that we have to support each other.
Oh my gosh. You're speaking my love language.
Yes, we can't, I can't think you're the coolest thing since bread and then not support you when you get promoted. I can't talk behind your back. I
Oh my
can't
gosh.
act in a way that says there's not enough room at the top for both of us, when clearly there's this whole place where we can stand together and we can hold hands and we can lift other women up behind us. So we have to stop that behavior. And that happens, that's a total inside job. That happens right with us, starts with us, and has nothing to do with anybody else.
Mm.
So if you can find or develop that kind of work culture in your place of business, or find other women outside of your workplace that give you that sort of support, that's probably the most powerful thing you can do.
Mm. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Um, so I'm reminded of the Barbie movie.
I think I have it on my calendar to go see next week. I'm
Mm.
I'm a reluctant attendee, but we'll see how this goes for me.
I was very much a reluctant attendee
Okay.
as well. And yes, I think I'm going to be seeing it a few times um, before it comes out of the theater. So, Tammy, I love what you just said. It is so important. I talk about
Mhm.
we have to end this mean girl culture.
Yeah.
We have to. And so, one of the things that I, share often and loudly is that we can, as women, talk about the patriarchy till we're blue in the face. But if we don't support each other, if we turn around and we gossip about each other, if we turn around and cut women down and not support them, then we support the patriarchy. We
Yes.
are the patriarchy.
Oh, yeah, we're holding it up with our 2 arms and our 2 feet. Yeah.
Right. And it's not until we start to see each other as um it's not until we start to hold each other up that
Yeah.
things are going to change. um yeah.
Yeah,
It's not.
and I mean, Sandra, how amazingly fortunate are we that we have found our group of women. We have this support. We have it personally, we have it professionally. So if you don't have this level of support, please reach out to Sandra for or myself. We have some local resources that we can help you if you're in Northeast Ohio. We have some resources if you're outside of that area. And we have some ideas for you to start your own
Oh my gosh.
circle of support, because really, if you can get a colleague or a girlfriend or two together and start that circle for somewhere, it grows because it's just so unique and different.
Mhm. And I would say that it's easy to say, right? Oh, we should all hold hands and sing kumbaya and whatever, right? And we can all think of women that we don't particularly um enjoy hanging out with, or that we don't think well of. There's a difference between setting boundaries and saying, I'm not a fan personally of that individual, and just keeping our distance. It's a completely different thing to then to go around and gossip about them. It's a totally different thing to, tell people who don't know about them or haven't, like, to speak ill of them.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. It's different to say. It's one thing to say, I don't like that person, and to establish a boundary. It's a completely different thing to malign them.
Yes. And it's okay. You don't have to like everybody.
Wow.
That's also something that we're sort of socialized into, right?
Yes.
It goes back to nice
Yes.
girls. Nice
Yes.
girls like everybody. Nice girls are polite. I think there's a difference between being polite and being the mean girl that does
Yes.
it behind their back. It's a
Yes.
totally different thing. And you can just let people go. People are who they are.
Yes.
You can't fundamentally change them, but it's okay if you just move on from them, and you don't have to love them, but you also don't have to talk bad about them. And maybe
Right.
it was a bad encounter, a bad day,
Yes.
right? A bad situation. Maybe you caught this other woman at the end of a bad meeting, right? Anything could happen. If it's a pattern of behavior, then it's just that person and you and her won't get along. But it doesn't mean you have to badmouth her.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've sort of like strayed a little bit from emotional intelligence, but I
You
think
think?
no, but I think that that is also part of emotional intelligence,
Right.
right? It's
Right.
also part of giving people grace, right? Emotional intelligence is also recognizing that the way we approached somebody may have been part of the problem,
Mm,
right? They're
right.
being aware of the situation, right? Had they just come out of, you know, a bad meeting, as you indicated, or something completely different. And yeah, were there other things going on? And we often don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And I think the biggest lesson is that EQ, emotional intelligence, is something you can work on and you can develop. So if you don't know your baseline, if you don't know your EQ superpower, go ahead and take the test. It's in this chat, and learn about it for yourself, and then learn how you can develop what maybe isn't some of your superpowers, and or you don't always have to develop your weaknesses. You can grow deeper into your strengths, because often they compensate for each
Yeah.
other, right?
Hmm. Such a great conversation on a Tuesday morning. And we're going to be doing this every Tuesday morning, right? Having
Yes.
coffee. I have coffee. You have coffee.
I have iced coffee. Is that still acceptable?
That's totally
Okay,
acceptable.
thank you.
your favorite caffeine ingestion process is perfectly acceptable in joining us on Tuesday mornings at 8:15. We'll be right here. We would welcome any thoughts or feedback in terms of topics that you would like us to, expound on, share our intelligence.
Yes,
Or
please.
even just our experience, right? And what we've seen in the workforce or what we are seeing with the clients that we coach.
Mhm.
Or even things that you have seen in your own workplace that you would like us to provide some thoughts or feedback on. And we also have a book that we are going to recommend, right? We haven't thought of one yet, but we were thinking, well, I'm anticipating so what are we recommending, Sandra? I don't know. But I think we also talked about maybe once a month we have a conversation around a book.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I think we mentioned a few great books, and Portia's recommending talking about discernment and judgment, Sandra, which is your sweet spot of
Mm,
coaching. I love when you talk about that. It's so great.
thank you. Yes. Well, we will take that under consideration, Portia.
Good idea.
Yeah, I like to say that judgment is easy, leadership is hard.
Mm. Yeah.
It's so easy when you're not leading to judge what a leader should be doing. When you're in leadership and you experience the challenges of leadership
Mhm.
and the imperfections, right? You have to learn to
Well,
live with imperfection.
and dare I say that we all lead,
Yes, we always
but
lead.
I think that we don't often view it that way. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is an attitude, it's an ownership. So I think if we could start viewing it that way, then it becomes less of a us versus them mentality and more of a we're in this together and how do we make it work?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I loved speaking with you, Annette.
I love speaking with you, Sandra. We could go for hours.
We could, and we have.
But we're going to cut it off here. And then
Yes, we are.
next week, you think we should preview that we're going to talk a little bit about voting and using
Yes.
any power that you can to get reflected back into our legislation, our leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Amen. Preach. Preach.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week, Tuesday,
Send
8:15 Eastern Time.
Tuesday, 8:15. I'll be there.